My dear students, let us now read through the lesson The Fall of Troy. Please open your textbooks to page 40. As I read through, look on your books, either on your e-books or on your physical textbooks, and as I read, you also silently read with me so that you know the pronunciations and the way of reading. Page 40, The Fall of Troy, Part 1. Epics are long poems that relate the deeds of a great national hero or a great national war. They often tell of a nation's early history. They may be composed and sung or recited for many years before they are actually written down. The two famous Sanskrit epics are the Ramayana and the Mahabharata, and the two great epics of European literature written in ancient Greeks are the Iliad and the Odyssey. Just as in Indian literature, we go back to stories from the Ramayana and the Mahabharata, so in the literature of Western countries, they go back to the Iliad and the Odyssey. Just as children all over India know the names of stories of Ram and Sita, Yudhishthira and Arjuna and Draupadi, so children in the Western countries know the names of Hector and Odysseus and Achilles and Helen of Troy, the most beautiful woman in the world, because of whom the Greek and the Trojans fought for 10 long years. Nobody knows for certain who the author of this early epic is. It is thought that they arose and developed with the nation itself and were handed down from singer to singer till perhaps one great poet gave them their final form. It is believed that the Iliad and the Odyssey were composed and recited by a blind poet named Homer, who lived about 1900 BCE and who wandered from one Greek city or village to another, singing his poems to all who would receive him in their homes and give him hospitality. This wandering singer has been honored through the ages, not only in Greece, but in all Europe as the father of European poetry. The Iliad is the story of Ilium or Troy, a rich trading city in Asia Minor near the narrow sea that leads from the Aegean to the Black Sea. It was well situated both for commerce and agriculture. In front of the city was the sea over which sailed the ships of Troy carrying goods and grain. At the back rose the high peak of Mount Ida, from which flowed many rivers and streams. The valleys among the hills were well watered and fertile, with corn growing in fertile fields and cattle feeding on the rich grass of the meadows, while sheep fed on the slopes of the hills. Round their city, the Trojans had built a strong wall so that no enemy should attack them from the sea. The wall was so broad that people could stand and sit and walk on it. The great gates stood open, and people could go to the seashore outside and come in as they pleased. But in time of war, the gates would be closed, and then the city was like a strong fortress, quite safe from all attack, protected by the walls surrounding it, as well as by the hills behind. Thus, Troy was a strong city, strongly protected by its wall and strongly defended by its brave soldiers. But all the kings and heroes of Greece had declared war against the Trojans, because Paris, a prince of Troy, had persuaded Helen, wife of a Greek king Menelaus, to elope with him. He had brought her to Troy. The Greeks wanted to take revenge on Troy for the wrong done to Menelaus. They sailed to Troy and laid siege to the city. The Trojans too fought hard and the siege continued for 10 long years. The fighting went on daily, but the siege did not end. On the other hand, the Greeks could not take the city, and on the other hand, the Trojans could not force them to sail away. Every day the Trojans came out of their gates, and the Greeks came out of their tents and ships, and the fighting went on. Sometimes there were great battles between the two armies. Sometimes there were single fights between two great heroes. Sometimes the Trojans had the better of it, and sometimes the Greeks. But still the fighting went on. Great heroes on both sides were killed in the course of the war. After leading the defense of his city for 9 years, the brave Hector was at last killed by Achilles, whom none could resist. But Achilles himself was killed later on by a poisoned arrow that entered his heel, the only part of his body where he could be wounded. Still later, Paris himself was killed also by a poisoned arrow. The Trojans were tired of being shut up in their city, and the Greeks were longing to see their home again. But still the fighting went on.